Summer update. So over the summer break, I've been working on this master copy. It's Samson by Solomon J. Solomon. Starting this master copy, what I'm doing is drawing straight on the canvas to get a drawing of everything, and then I'll paint on top of it. So what I did was starting with a grid, and the charcoal that I'm using is Nitrum charcoal, and it's the really soft charcoal. It's the one that comes in the yellow boxes, and instead of them being the square or rectangle shape, they're cylinders. And since it's really soft, it goes on the linen really easily, and then it comes off it really easily when I want to erase it. And also, I won a contest by them a while ago, and they sent me this baton, and I wish I had it with me. I'll find a picture or something online. It feels like when I use it with the charcoal, it feels like I'm holding a paintbrush, and I can get more distance away from the canvas, which I feel is really helpful, especially since this painting is so massive that any movements that I do are going to be bigger and not detail or fine or anything, especially starting and just laying in the drawing of it. So I used it throughout the whole thing, and I modified it a little bit because the baton that they have, it comes with little charcoals, and they're really thin and small, and I don't like the charcoals that come with them because I think they break really easily, and they would make a smaller line too because they're pretty small and thin. So they have this adjustment sliding thing on it, so it will hold those small charcoals. I broke that off so I can open the end of it and put the bigger pieces of charcoal in it, and that's been working really well for me. If I keep doing big canvases like this, I might buy another baton so I can stick a piece of white chalk in it, so I have one that's charcoal and one that's chalk. With this painting, there is a whole lot going on with it. There's a lot of figures and objects in it, but I feel like so far it's gone really smoothly. It's just takes time to put all these things in, and I think because it's going easily for me is because of the cast painting that I did of the cherubs, and that is a multifigural painting, and I did struggle a lot with getting started with how to paint that. I would focus on one figure and move to the next, and then they didn't have a wholeness to the image, so it was a lot of learning to look at the whole image as one piece and not pick out different figures through it, especially when you're starting it. So I definitely feel like working on that cast painting was a perfect introduction to working on a big painting like this with multi figures in it. So what I do then is I start off with just wanting to get the big composition in, and the Solomon J. Solomon painting, I love the composition. I want to use something like this probably a lot in future paintings, but it's got this nice swirl in it where you can see the swirl, and it all goes to Samson, and then it swirls around the people that are holding him down, and then it goes and hits Delilah that's taunting him with the hair that she cut off. So when starting it, I'm starting it with the big swirl in it, and thinking of really long lines as I can do that make up the gesture, not of one person, but the gesture of the whole painting, so that swirling composition. And then once I feel like I've got that, then I start breaking it up more and slowly start putting in complicating it a little bit more, so then it's pulling out figures from that, but still trying to think of that big light shape and the big shadow shape, which is not in just a figure, like I was saying, but the whole thing of the painting. And so the light shape is really that swirling figure of Samson and the two guys that are holding him down, and then Delilah. So it's working out those and making sure that those big shapes made sense. And then once I got those big shapes, I would break it down into the smaller shapes of the actual bodies, and then going into the shadow shape and pulling out the figures that are in there, and then all the other details as well, like the scissors on the floor, the tipped over table in the bed, and everything else that's in it. Also finding that working this big is definitely an adjustment. If I would go back into my, like, stand as far back as I need to be able to take in the whole image, and I would see that maybe a proportion somewhere was too big and I wanted to slim it down, and then I would go up to the canvas and I would correct the line, and I would go back, and if I did it too small, I couldn't see any difference. So I was learning to get used to, when I'm up in front of, like, right in front of the canvas, to make sure that my adjustments are going to be accurate and big enough to make an effect when I stand all the way back. Also, doing this for working on the drawing, I was putting out a lot of charcoal, like pushing harder so it would get darker so I could see it from my viewing spot, which is pretty far back. But working big has been really, really fun. I love it, and I probably want to do a lot bigger paintings in the future. It's really fun. There's a lot of movement when I'm, running up to my canvas, making an adjustment or a new mark, and then going back and looking at it. And also, since the thing is so big, it's just, I feel like I'm using my whole entire body to draw, and it's just really, really fun, and I love it. And so the tools that I used for drawing on this is that Nitram charcoal that comes in the yellow boxes. I'm not exactly sure what it's called. White chalk, which is just normal chocolate that you would use on a chalkboard. I used a chamois that would take the charcoal and the chalk off completely. And then if I wanted to be a little bit more careful and maybe knock down lines that I'd made and not take them off completely, I would use a fan brush. And also, I could, if I filled in a lot of tone, I could use the fan brush to kind of move the charcoal on the canvas and kind of, because the charcoal's really soft and powdery, I felt like I could manipulate it and kind of move it into different shapes. It's kind of hard to explain without seeing it. And once I got the drawing as good as I could get it, I took my fan brush and I knocked the charcoal down, and I was careful to do that. So in the bigger areas where I was just really filling in a mass of a shadow shape, I would take the charcoal off of that area still so I could see all the lines. But I wanted to get as much charcoal off of the canvas as I could before I started painting over it. And then with painting, I start by doing a first wash. And so I mixed up a shadow color, and the colors that I have on my palette right now is black, red, and yellow, specifically ivory black, cadmium red light, and yellow ochre. And I made a mixture of those three to come up with a shadow shape. So it looks like a raw umber or something like that. And so I just took that one value, one color, only one mixture on my palette, and I started again really focusing on the big composition. So making sure the swirling of the composition made sense, and I'm pulling out the light shape with the Samson and the two other figures, and then Delilah, and I was just working around those areas. And as I'm doing this, I'm thinking about the swirling composition, but also thinking about all the tension that's in the painting. I want to capture that as soon as possible, because I think that's a really important element of this painting, is all these really tense bodies. And once I'm happy with those bigger shapes, same thing where I start breaking it down from there, filling everything in with paint. I'm still trying to think really simply: the light shape, the shadow shape. So there's a lot of figures. There's 12 figures in this painting. There's a lot in the background, and I'm not putting too much detail into it. It's just taking the drawing that I had before of the basic shapes of all of those figures and everything that's in the painting, but then bringing it a little bit closer to nature with the paint by making the values have an actual value scale, because I didn't really have that with the charcoal drawing so much. So I'm happy with how the wash ended. I feel like I can see where my lights are, where the midtones are, and then where the shadows are. I'm not just filling in everything that my charcoal drawing had. I'm seeing where I can correct things and change proportions to make them more accurate, Definitely having the first wash. I really like this stage because you can see a lot more than you couldn't with just the drawing, because you're getting values in there. I see in masses, so having all the masses of the values helps me see if the proportions in the lighter areas are too big or too small. So I really like this because I feel like I can make a lot of corrections in this stage that I couldn't see in just the drawing stage. Also, I wanted to share a portrait that I made of Dave, and this is done in Neutrum charcoal, white chalk, on Canson paper.